The wedding ring rested in my palm. It felt heavier than a piece of gold should ever feel. Outside the waiting room, soft music floated through the hall while guests laughed, hugged, and took photos beneath white flowers that Claire had spent months choosing. Everyone believed they were minutes away from watching the happiest day of my life. So did I. I straightened my tie in the mirror and smiled at my own reflection. "You made it," I whispered. 5 years together. Countless late nights. Dreams built one promise at a time. Every sacrifice suddenly seemed worth it. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Daniel leaned against the doorway, adjusting the sleeves of his suit. "You nervous?" "A little." He laughed. "If you weren't, I'd think something was wrong." "I'm just ready." His grin softened. "You've waited a long time for this." "I know." He stepped closer and fixed my crooked tie. "Dad would have been proud." Those words landed deeper than he probably realized. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Daniel squeezed my shoulder before leaving. "Don't keep your bride waiting." The door closed. I looked down at the ring again. Just a few more minutes. Then she would become my wife. Another knock. This one was quieter, almost uncertain. I smiled. "Come in." The door opened slowly. Claire stood there. She was wearing the wedding dress we had chosen together 6 months earlier. She looked beautiful, but not happy. Her makeup couldn't hide how pale she looked. Her bouquet shook ever so slightly in her hands. My smile faded. "Claire." She didn't move. The room suddenly felt much smaller. "I need to tell you something." Every word came slowly, as though speaking hurt. I took one step forward. "What happened?" She stared at the floor. "I can't do this." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I can't marry you today." The sentence didn't sound real. It floated through the room like someone else's conversation. I waited for the rest, for the joke, for the misunderstanding. Nothing came. "I need more time." Her fingers tightened around the flowers. "I need to focus on my future." The ring slipped slightly in my hand. "Our future." A tiny shake of her head answered before her lips did. "My future." My heartbeat became strangely calm. Too calm. What changed? She opened her mouth. "Close it again. There are things I still need to figure out. We've had 5 years. I know. If something was wrong, I didn't know how to tell you." The silence between us stretched longer than either of us wanted. My mind searched desperately for another explanation. Was someone sick? Had something happened to her family? Was she scared? Anything made more sense than this. "You still love me?" She looked away. That hurt more than any answer. "I care about you." Not yes. Not anymore. Just, "I care about you." The room suddenly felt colder. "I never wanted to hurt you." A weak smile appeared on my face before I even understood why. "That's impossible." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I'm sorry." I looked at the ring again. Months earlier, I had imagined sliding it on her finger while everyone cheered. Now it simply rested against my skin, waiting for a future that no longer existed. A loud burst of laughter echoed from outside. Guests had no idea the wedding had already ended. Claire finally looked at me. "Aren't you going to say something?" Thousands of thoughts crashed into each other. Questions, anger, confusion, begging. Every possible reaction stood in front of me. None of them would change her mind. I took a slow breath. "Thank you." Her eyebrows lifted. "What?" "Thank you for telling me before we stood in front of everyone." She stared at me as if I had spoken another language. "I don't understand. If you already knew your heart wasn't here." My fingers closed around the ring. "It's better to stop now than after we're married." Her lips trembled. "Ethan, it's okay." No, it wasn't. Not even close. But screaming wouldn't fix it. Crying wouldn't make her love me again. Holding on to someone already walking away would only leave deeper scars. She took one uncertain step toward me. My feet stayed where they were. The distance between us suddenly felt impossible to cross. I never wanted this. Neither did I. Another pause. "I hope one day you understand." I almost laughed. "I'm starting to." She searched my face, almost disappointed that I wasn't falling apart in front of her. Maybe she expected anger. Maybe tears. Maybe a desperate promise to change. Instead, I simply opened the ring box, placed the ring inside, closed it gently. The small click sounded louder than the music outside. Claire lowered her eyes. Without another word, she turned and walked away. The door remained open behind her. Voices drifted into the room. What happened? The wedding's canceled. She called it off. Poor Ethan. Within minutes, the whispers spread through the venue faster than any announcement ever could. Every hallway carried another version of the story. People stopped talking when I walked past. Some smiled with pity. Others pretended not to stare. A few avoided looking at me altogether. The carefully decorated reception hall stood waiting. Hundreds of candles, white roses, crystal glasses. The untouched dinner sat on every table, growing colder by the minute. Our names were written in elegant letters across the head table. Claire and Ethan. The words already belonged to another life. My phone vibrated. One unread message remained at the top of the screen. Sent last night. Sleep well. Tomorrow will finally start forever. I love you. Red heart. Mine. Still marked as unread. She had never opened it. I read it twice before locking the screen. That tiny notification hurt more than seeing the empty wedding aisle. I walked onto the stage one last time. The chairs stood perfectly arranged. Flowers surrounded the altar. Everything was ready, except us. Daniel hurried toward me, panic written across his face. Ethan. He stopped when he saw my expression. What happened? She canceled it. His jaw tightened. You're kidding. I slowly shook my head. I'll go talk to her. I caught his arm before he could leave. Don't. She can't do this to you. She already did. He looked ready to argue. Instead, he pulled me into a tight hug. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. A few moments later, I stepped outside. The afternoon air felt strangely normal. Cars passed. Birds sang. Life continued without caring that mine had just fallen apart. I reached my car and climbed inside. The ring box rested on the passenger seat. For several seconds, I simply stared at it. Then I placed it inside the glove compartment and closed the lid. Maybe one day I'd open it again. Maybe not. The engine started. I pulled away from the venue without looking back. Halfway down the road, my phone buzzed again. A new message. No name. Just a photo. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I stopped at a red light. Claire stood outside the venue. Ryan's arms were wrapped around her. She wasn't pushing him away. She was leaning into him. The timestamp read only 2 minutes earlier. The light turned green. Cars behind me honked. I couldn't move. One question echoed through my mind louder than every wedding vow we never spoke. Had she canceled the wedding today, or had I been losing her for months without ever seeing it? The apartment sounded different after she left. Not because it became quieter, because every small noise reminded me someone was missing. The refrigerator hummed. The clock kept ticking. A coffee mug sat beside the sink exactly where Claire had left it 2 days before the wedding. I walked past it every morning. Every morning, my hand reached toward it. Every morning, I stopped halfway. One evening, I finally picked it up. The faint mark of her lipstick still rested on the rim. I washed it. Then I placed it in a cardboard box with the rest of her things. The closet looked twice as large now. My suits filled one side. The other side held empty hangers that swayed whenever the window was open. I stood there longer than I should have. 5 years together, reduced to empty space. My phone buzzed. Daniel, you've ignored me for 3 days. I've been busy. You've been hiding. His voice carried no anger, only concern. I just need time. You've had time. It's only been 3 weeks. And you've spent every one of those weeks inside that apartment. I leaned against the wall. What do you want me to do? Come outside. I'm not ready. You'll never feel ready. His words stayed with me long after the call ended. The next morning, he knocked anyway. I opened the door wearing the same sweatshirt I had slept in. He looked around the apartment. Boxes covered the living room. Wedding decorations still filled one corner. You haven't packed those? No. You don't need them. I know. He picked up one framed wedding invitation. Our names were printed in elegant silver letters. Claire Bennett, Ethan Carter. His thumb brushed across the glass. Keeping this won't change what happened. I wasn't keeping it. Then why is it still here? I had no answer. Daniel carried the frame into the kitchen. A trash bag waited beside the table. He looked at me one last time. You can stop me. I stayed where I was. The frame disappeared into the bag. Something inside me wanted to grab it back. Another part understood it was only paper, not a future. Daniel tied the bag shut. Come on. Where? Breakfast. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask. A small smile almost appeared. Almost. 20 minutes later, we sat inside a quiet diner. The waitress filled our coffee cups. Daniel watched me stir mine without taking a sip. You still love her. The spoon stopped moving. Yes. And loving someone doesn't mean they should stay. He nodded slowly. That's the smartest thing you've said in weeks. I stared through the window. What if she changes her mind? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed toward the street. An elderly couple walked hand in hand. Neither looked in a hurry. See them? I nodded. That's what marriage looks like. His eyes settled on mine. It doesn't begin with someone walking away. Those words followed me home. The apartment greeted me with the same empty rooms. Only now they felt smaller. I carried another box into the bedroom. Inside the nightstand waited a photo album. Our first vacation. Our first apartment. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. Pictures where we laughed so hard the camera barely caught our faces. Near the end, something changed. Claire smiled less. Her phone appeared in almost every picture. Sometimes she wasn't even looking at me. I turned another page. Our anniversary dinner. The restaurant had been beautiful. I remembered sitting across from her while candlelight reflected in the window. Halfway through the meal, her phone rang. I have to take this. She stepped outside. 20 minutes. 30. The food turned cold. She returned with an apology and a tired smile. I promise I'll make it up to you. She never did. Another page. Movie tickets. Canceled. Weekend trip. Canceled. Dinner with my family. Canceled. Each memory suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle I had refused to solve. She hadn't left me in one day. She had been leaving little by little. I simply kept calling it stress. My phone rang again. An unknown number. I ignored it. A soft knock came an hour later. When I opened the door, a familiar face smiled gently. Emma, it's been a long time. It has. She held up 2 paper bags. I brought dinner. You didn't have to. I know. She stepped inside without waiting for another invitation. The apartment told the whole story before I did. Boxes. Half-empty shelves. Dust where pictures once stood. Emma placed the food on the table. No speeches. I wasn't expecting one. No pity either. Thank you. She handed me a sandwich. You need to eat. I've been eating. She raised one eyebrow. Really? I laughed quietly. The sound surprised both of us. We ate in comfortable silence. Not awkward. Not forced. Just peaceful. Before leaving, she stopped near the doorway. You're allowed to miss her. I do. But don't miss the version of her that only exists in your memories. The door closed softly behind her. I stood there repeating those words. The version that only exists in my memories. The next morning I opened my contacts. Claire. One tap would start another conversation. One tap would bring another unanswered question. My thumb hovered over her name. 5 years. Countless messages. Late-night jokes. Plans. Dreams. Everything hidden behind one contact. I pressed delete. The phone asked one final question. Delete contact? I closed my eyes. Yes. Her name disappeared. The screen became strangely empty. Not because I stopped loving her. Because I stopped reaching for someone who had already let go. A week later, a real estate agent walked through the house we had planned to fill with children, birthdays, and ordinary mornings. It's a beautiful place. We can probably sell it quickly. That's fine. The paperwork took less than an hour. Years of planning ended with signatures on printed pages. As I walked outside, another call arrived. This time it came from my company. Our Seattle project just opened again. My manager waited. We need someone to lead it. It's a 2-year assignment. I know. Interested. I looked back at the house one last time. The front porch. The flower beds Claire once wanted. The windows where we imagined growing old together. I'm in. Excellent. We'll start the transfer immediately. Everything moved quickly after that. Boxes disappeared. Furniture sold. Keys returned. My life fit inside one packed suitcase. The night before leaving town, I sat alone in the apartment for the last time. The walls echoed now. Even my footsteps sounded like they belonged to a stranger. My phone lit up. One new voicemail. Claire. No message preview. Only her name. My finger rested above the screen. Questions crowded my mind. Why now? Was she sorry? Did something happen? Did she finally realize what she had thrown away? Several long seconds passed. Then I opened the options. Delete voicemail. The phone asked if I was sure. I pressed yes. The recording vanished without ever reaching my ears. Some answers arrived too late. Others no longer matter. I slipped the phone into my pocket, picked up my suitcase, and walked toward the door without looking back. The sunrise over Seattle looked nothing like home. Cold air drifted through my apartment window while the city slowly came alive below me. 6 months earlier, I had arrived carrying one suitcase and a heart that still expected to hear Claire's voice every morning. Now the apartment finally felt like mine, not because it was full, because I had stopped waiting for someone else to fill it. My alarm buzzed. I stretched, put on my running shoes, and headed outside. The first few weeks had been miserable. Every mile reminded me of everything I wanted to outrun. Now the rhythm of my footsteps cleared my mind before the day even began. An older man jogging beside me smiled. "You're getting faster." "I've had good practice." "Training for a race?" I laughed. "More like training for life." He nodded as if he understood exactly what I meant. Back at the office, blueprints covered my desk. The new project was the biggest opportunity of my career. A waterfront community. 3 modern buildings. Hundreds of families who would one day call it home. My manager stopped beside my desk. "The client loved your redesign." "Really? They want you leading the next phase." A month ago, I would have doubted myself. Today, I simply smiled. "I won't let them down." "I know." Those 3 words stayed with me all afternoon. Someone believed in me again. The feeling was strange. Not because it was new, because I had forgotten what it sounded like. That evening my phone rang. "Emma." "Busy. Just leaving work." "Dinner?" "I could eat." "Same little restaurant. I'll be there in 20. She was already waiting when I arrived. 2 cups of coffee sat on the table. "You ordered already." "You were late." 3 minutes. She pointed toward the clock. 4. I laughed. "You count it." I had nothing better to do. The waiter brought our meals. For a while we talked about work, the weather, and the city. Normal conversations. The kind I hadn't realized I missed. Emma rested her fork on the plate. "You look different. Hopefully better." "Much." She studied me for a second. "You're sleeping again." "I am." "Running." "Every morning." "Eating real food." "I even cook sometimes." A proud smile crossed her face. "I knew you'd come back." "I wasn't gone." "Weren't you?" That question stayed in the air. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was reminding me how much of myself I had given away. "I spent years building Claire's dreams." "And yours?" I looked through the restaurant window. I kept telling myself I'd get to them later. Emma leaned back. Maybe later finally arrived. Those words stayed with me all week. Maybe later. Maybe this was the life I had postponed while waiting for someone else's happiness. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The project moved ahead. My confidence quietly returned. I laughed more often. I called Daniel every Sunday. The conversations no longer began with long pauses. One afternoon, he answered with his usual energy. "Seattle still treating you well?" "It is." "You sound different." "Different good. The best kind." He hesitated. I heard something. "What?" "Claire's company is having problems." I stayed silent. Ryan made a few business decisions without telling her. "That's unfortunate." "You don't want details?" A few months earlier I would have. Now the feeling surprised me. "I hope she figures it out." "That's all." "That's all." Daniel chuckled softly. "I knew you'd get here." After hanging up, I stood beside my office window. Rain tapped gently against the glass. Part of me still cared about Claire. I probably always would. But caring no longer meant chasing. The two weren't the same. A few days later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Curiosity won. Hello? A familiar voice answered. Ethan. Claire. I closed my office door. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. I just wanted to know how you are. I'm doing well. She seemed surprised. Really? Really? Another pause. I heard your project is going well. It is. I'm happy for you. Thank you. The conversation stumbled forward. Not because there was anger. Because there wasn't much left to hold it together. I've called before. I know. You never answered. I needed distance. I understand. Her voice grew quieter. I don't think I realized what silence could feel like. My fingers rested against the window. I wasn't trying to punish you. I know. I was trying to heal. She breathed slowly. I miss talking to you. I believe you. Do you ever miss me? The question deserved honesty. Sometimes. Hope quickly entered her voice. Then maybe. I miss who we used to be. The hope faded just as quickly. That's not the same thing. No. She whispered something too softly for me to hear. I should go. Ethan, take care of yourself. The call ended. I stood there for another minute before returning to work. The conversation left no excitement. No anger. Only acceptance. Later that week, Emma stopped by the construction site carrying 2 cups of coffee. You've been promoted. News travels fast. I have my sources. She handed me a cup. Proud of you. Thanks. Workers moved across the unfinished building behind us. Steel beams stretched toward the sky. Emma watched them for a while. Funny. What is? You build homes. I smiled. I do. You spent years trying to build one with the wrong person. Her words hit harder than she probably intended. But you're still building. She pointed toward the structure. That part never changed. I looked across the site. Maybe she was right. Claire hadn't taken away who I was. She had only delayed the moment I remembered it. Autumn arrived. The city filled with orange leaves. One Saturday morning, I received another message from an unknown number. This time it wasn't a call, just a short text. Congratulations on the promotion. I always knew you could do it. Claire. I read it once. Then I locked the phone. No reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of respect for the boundaries I had finally learned to keep. Weeks later, my company sponsored a charity fundraiser downtown. Architects, business owners, local leaders, and donors filled the ballroom. Soft music floated through the crowd. I balanced a plate in one hand while laughing at one of my co-workers' terrible jokes. You call that dancing? I call it surviving. You're hopeless. So I've been told. My laughter came easily. It didn't feel forced anymore. Then something shifted. Across the room, near the entrance, a familiar figure stopped walking. Claire. She stood frozen beside her mother. Her eyes searched the room until they landed on me. She expected to find the man who couldn't move on. Instead, she found me smiling, not pretending, not hiding pain behind polite words. A real smile, the kind she hadn't seen in a very long time. She didn't look away. Neither did I. But this time, neither of us took a single step forward. Claire didn't leave the ballroom. Neither did I. People continued talking, laughing, and moving between tables as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet all I could hear was the quiet space between us. She took one careful step forward. I wasn't expecting to see you. I wasn't expecting to be here either. A faint smile touched her lips. You look happy. I've had time to rebuild. Her eyes stayed on my face, almost searching for the man she used to know. I've been trying to reach you. I know. I didn't come here to ruin your evening. Then why did you come? She lowered her gaze. I wanted one conversation. I looked around the crowded room. This isn't the place. It doesn't have to be now. The hope in her voice sounded fragile. Tomorrow? I thought about refusing. Months earlier, I would have accepted without hesitation. Now I understood that agreeing didn't mean giving someone another chance. It only meant listening. Tomorrow morning. Relief washed across her face. Thank you. The next day arrived with gray clouds and cool wind. We met near the waterfront where quiet streets stretched beside the water. Neither of us reached for a hug. Neither of us pretended nothing had happened. We simply started walking. For several minutes, only our footsteps broke the silence. Claire finally spoke. I've practiced this conversation 100 times. Did any version go well? A sad smile answered. Not one. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself. I've spent months trying to understand what I did, and I thought I was choosing time. Her voice grew softer. I never believed I was choosing goodbye. I watched small waves roll against the shore. You canceled our wedding. I know. You didn't postpone dinner. You didn't delay a vacation. You ended our future. Each sentence seemed heavier than the last. She nodded slowly. I kept telling myself you would wait. The words landed harder than I expected. You were always patient. She looked down at the sidewalk. You forgave every canceled date. You forgave forgotten anniversaries. You forgave late nights at work. I convinced myself you'd forgive this too. I stopped walking. So that's what I became. Confusion crossed her face. What? Someone who would always stay. She couldn't answer. Because it was true. I never thought you'd leave. You left first. A tear escaped before she brushed it away. I know. We continued walking. The cold breeze carried the smell of rain. After a long stretch of silence, she spoke again. Ryan wasn't what you think. I let her continue. He made me feel like everything was possible. He talked about bigger projects, more money, travel, recognition. She shook her head. It felt exciting. Was it love? No. The answer came without hesitation. It was excitement. I confused the two. I breathed slowly. So, why the picture outside the wedding? She closed her eyes for a moment. He hugged me, and you didn't stop him. I didn't. Why? I was scared. Of what? Of admitting I'd destroyed the best thing in my life. Her honesty hurt more than another lie would have. For months I had imagined hundreds of explanations. None of them changed what happened. She looked toward the water. I kept chasing a future that looked impressive. A bitter laugh escaped her. I never noticed I already had someone who made every ordinary day feel safe. The sentence hung between us. Safe. Years earlier, I would have smiled proudly. Today it sounded like an apology arriving long after the damage. My turn. She looked at me quietly. I wasn't perfect either. Her eyebrows lifted. I spent years trying to become everything you needed. I know. I never asked what I needed. She frowned slightly. I don't understand. I kept sacrificing. My time. My plans. My dreams. I thought love meant giving more every time. I smiled sadly. Eventually, there wasn't much of me left. You never complained. That was my mistake. She opened her mouth but stopped. I trained you to believe my needs could always wait. My words weren't meant to blame her. They were the truth I had finally learned. I should have spoken sooner. You should have listened sooner. We stood there for a moment. Neither of us argued. Neither of us defended the past. The truth didn't need decoration. It simply existed. Claire reached into her purse. A folded newspaper rested inside. She handed it to me. The headline mentioned her company. Financial investigation. Executive changes. Lost investors. I looked back at her. What happened? Ryan. She laughed once. There wasn't any joy in it. He approved contracts without telling me. He moved money into projects that benefited him. I trusted every decision because I thought he believed in my vision. And now, my reputation is falling apart. She folded her arms tightly. People who praised me disappeared overnight. The pain in her eyes looked different now. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just exhausted. My mother still tells me to protect our image. Another bitter smile appeared. She keeps talking about what people think. What do you think? Claire stared across the water. I think I traded someone who loved me for people who only loved my success. No answer came from me. There wasn't one that could fix that realization. The wind grew stronger. She shivered slightly. You know what hurts the most? I waited. You never tried to destroy me. I thought you'd hate me. I thought you'd expose me. I thought you'd spend months trying to prove I made the wrong choice. She looked directly at me. You disappeared. I had to. That silence. She struggled to finish. It forced me to hear my own mistakes. My phone buzzed inside my pocket. I ignored it. This conversation deserved my full attention. Claire took a careful step closer. I've replayed our last day together. So have I. When you thanked me? She shook her head. I couldn't understand it. I understand it now. Do you? You were protecting your dignity. She smiled through tired eyes. I thought you were giving up. I was letting go. The difference finally reached her. Fresh tears gathered, but she didn't hide behind them. Instead, she took another small step. Her hand slowly reached toward mine. Not demanding, not expecting, just hoping. For one brief second, I remembered every good memory we had shared. Our first apartment, late-night pizza, road trips with the windows down, dreams whispered before falling asleep. Then I remembered the wedding ring resting inside its box, the unread message, the empty chairs waiting for a ceremony that never happened. My hand stayed where it was. Then I gently stepped back. The space between us returned. She let her arm fall to her side. No anger crossed her face, only understanding. I deserved that. The words barely rose above a whisper. We stood together beside the water while the city moved around us. Nothing more needed to be defended. Nothing more needed to be hidden. After another long pause, Claire gathered enough courage to ask the question that had been waiting between us since the wedding. Is there? She stopped and took a slow breath. Is there any path back to us? I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Claire's question stayed between us. Is there any path back to us? The wind carried her words across the water, but they never drifted away. They settled inside me, beside every memory I had spent months learning to carry without letting it break me. I took a slow breath. There isn't. She closed her eyes, not because she hadn't expected the answer, because hearing it out loud made it real. So, this is it. I nodded. It is. She looked toward the river instead of at me. I thought if we talked honestly, maybe we could find our way back. We did find the truth. A sad smile touched her face. It just wasn't the truth I wanted. For a while, neither of us moved. The city continued around us. Cars crossed the bridge. Birds skimmed across the water. Life never pauses for one broken heart. Claire finally turned back to me. I've asked myself something every day since the wedding. I waited. When I called everything off, her voice trembled. Why did you thank me? The answer had lived inside me since that morning. I had simply never spoken it aloud. I thanked you because you stopped before the vows. Confusion crossed her face. I don't understand. If we had gotten married, I looked down at my hands, and then I discovered your heart had already left. The words came slowly. That pain would have been much worse. She stared at me without blinking. You saved me from spending years beside someone who no longer chose me. A tear rolled down her cheek. I never wanted to save you that way. I know. You deserved better. I deserved honesty. She lowered her head. And you finally gave me that, even if it came far too late. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. I've spent months wishing I could go back. So have I. Hope flickered for one brief second. You have. I'd go back to the man I used to be. The hope quietly disappeared. I'd tell him not to confuse sacrifice with love. I'd tell him to speak when something hurt instead of pretending everything was fine. I'd tell him that peace is worth more than keeping someone who has already started walking away. Claire listened without interrupting. Every sentence seemed to settle heavily on her shoulders. I didn't lose you in one day. No, I lost you every time I made you feel like your dreams could wait. I smiled sadly, and I helped you believe they always would. Neither of us escaped responsibility. That was the hardest truth of all. She reached into her purse and pulled out something small. My old apartment key. I kept this. She placed it in my hand. I don't need it anymore. The cold metal rested against my skin for a moment before I slipped it into my pocket. Not because I wanted to keep it, because throwing it away in front of her would have felt cruel. I've ended everything with Ryan. Her voice carried no anger, only exhaustion. It didn't matter. I already knew I made the wrong choice long before that. She took a deep breath. My company may never recover. My reputation probably won't either. I've disappointed my mother. I've disappointed myself. Then her eyes met mine. But losing you, she couldn't finish. She didn't need to. I already understood. I loved you. The words came naturally. I know. I really did. I never doubted that. She frowned slightly. Then why couldn't we survive? Because love isn't the only thing a marriage needs. She stood quietly. It needs trust. It needs respect. It needs two people choosing each other every day. I was choosing you. You stopped. She nodded once. No excuses. No arguments. Only acceptance. I don't expect forgiveness. You already have it. Her head lifted quickly. You forgive me? I do. She searched my face. How? Because carrying anger would only keep me tied to the worst day of my life. I smiled gently. But forgiveness doesn't mean we belong together. Fresh tears gathered in her eyes. This time she let them fall without trying to hide them. I understand. For the first time since the wedding, I believe she truly did. We walked back toward the city. At the corner where our paths separated, she stopped. This is goodbye. It is. She gave me one last smile. Small. Honest. I hope one day someone loves you the way you deserved all along. I hope one day you learn to love yourself enough not to chase the wrong things. She nodded. Then she turned and walked away. She never looked back. Neither did I. A week later, Emma knocked on my apartment door carrying 2 paper cups. Coffee delivery. You keep saving my mornings. She laughed. I thought architects survived on coffee. We do. She stepped onto the balcony with me. Rain clouds drifted slowly across the sky. You met her. I nodded. How did it go? We finally told each other the truth. And I think we both needed it. Emma leaned against the railing. You seem lighter. I am. She smiled. I'm glad. There was no pressure. No awkward questions. She never tried to become the answer to my past. She simply respected the person I had become. That quiet kindness meant more than dramatic promises ever could. Later that afternoon, I opened the glove compartment in my car. The small ring box still waited inside. Dust covered the corners. I picked it up carefully. Months ago, it had represented everything I thought I needed. Now it represented everything I had survived. I drove to the river just before sunset. The water reflected streaks of gold and orange across its surface. A gentle breeze brushed past me. I opened the box. The wedding ring rested exactly where I had left it. Unworn, unclaimed, a future that had never begun. I rolled it gently between my fingers. It no longer felt heavy, not because it weighed less, because I finally understood I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. I had already put down the guilt, the anger, the questions that never had satisfying answers. Only one thing remained. I looked across the moving water. Thank you. The word surprised even me. Not for the heartbreak, not for the humiliation, not for the lonely nights or broken dreams. I was grateful because the wedding had ended before it trapped 2 unhappy people inside a promise that neither of us could truly keep. That painful morning forced me to become someone stronger, someone more honest, someone who finally understood that loving myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. My hand opened. The ring slipped free. A small splash. Then gentle circles spread across the river before disappearing completely. The water carried it away without hesitation. I watched until the last ripple faded. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden miracle. No perfect ending. Just a quiet feeling that something inside me had finally settled. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Dinner next Sunday? Emma's coming too. A smile appeared before I even realized it. Wouldn't miss it. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and turned away from the river. Each step felt easier than the one before. The wedding day I had dreamed about never happened. For a long time, I believed that was the greatest tragedy of my life. Now I knew better. The happiest day of my life was never supposed to be the day I married someone who no longer chose me. It was the day I finally chose myself.